A leopard won't stop pounding on a police station door, and the reason why broke everyone. At first, the officers think it's a wild attack. Guns are raised, fear fills the room. But one man notices something no one else does. This animal isn't here to kill, it's here to beg. What drove a predator to seek shelter with humans? What secret is it trying to reveal? And when the truth finally comes out, it's darker, more dangerous, and more heartbreaking than anyone could imagine. What was this leopard running from man? What happens when the real enemy is revealed? Before we start, take a moment to comment your name or city. It's my way of remembering that behind each play is a real heartbeat. The sun had just begun to set over the small Montana town, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and purple. Deputy Calvin Mercer sat at his desk in the police station, methodically organizing paperwork as he always did during the quiet evening shift. The gentle scratch of his pen and the hum of fluorescent lights were the only sounds breaking the silence. That peaceful moment shattered when an explosive roar echoed through the building. The walls seemed to shake as something massive slammed. Against the station's glass doors, Mercer jumped to his feet, his heart pounding as other officers burst from their offices, weapons already drawn. What in God's name? Sheriff Alton Crowder bellowed. His face flushed red as he charged down the hallway. Through the glass doors, Mercer saw what had caused the commotion. A leopard, its muscular body tensed as it threw itself against the entrance again. It's powerful. Shoulders hit the reinforced glass with desperate force. Officers raised their rifles, ready to fire, but something made Mercer pause. While others saw aggression, he noticed different details. The animal's heaving flanks, the way its eyes darted around wildly, not with predatory focus, but with fear. There was something clutched in its mouth, what looked like a piece of torn fabric. "Hold your fire," Mercer shouted, surprising himself with the authority in his voice. He stepped forward, positioning himself between the aimed rifles and the doors. "Get out of the way, Mercer," Sheriff Crowder snarled. "Oh, that thing's rabid. It needs to be put down before it kills someone." Outside, townspeople began gathering, drawn by the commotion. Their shocked faces pressed against windows, cell phones recording the scene. The leopard let out another roar, but to Mercer's trained ear, it sounded more like a cry of pain. "Look at it, Sheriff," Mercer insisted, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "It's not attacking, it's asking for help. Have you lost your mind?" Crowder's face grew even redder. "Step aside, deputy. It's an order." But Mercer stood his ground, arms spread wide. "Sir, with all due respect, something's wrong here. This isn't normal behavior for a wild animal. It came specifically to us." As if responding to his words, the leopard suddenly swayed on its feet. Its powerful legs trembled, and then it collapsed onto the concrete entrance. As it fell, Mercer saw what he hadn't noticed before, a thick metal collar around its neck, crusted with dried blood where it had cut into the animal's flesh. "Look," Mercer pointed. "That's a tracking collar. This isn't a wild animal. It belongs to someone who's been hurting it." The gathered officers lowered their weapons slightly, uncertainty replacing their fear. Sheriff Crowder's jaw clenched as he processed this new information, his trigger finger twitching with indecision. "Yet, if we shoot it now," Mercer continued, his voice softer, but no less firm, "we might be destroying evidence of a crime. This animal came to us for a reason." The leopard lay still now, its sides heaving with exhausted breaths. Despite its massive size and fearsome appearance, there was something heartbreaking in its vulnerability, the piece of fabric it had been. Carrying had fallen from its mouth, a torn scrap of what looked like a child's dress. Sheriff Mercer said, meeting Crowder's eyes steadily, "Something terrible is happening out there. This animal is trying to tell us something, and I think we need to listen." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. For several long moments, no one moved. Then, finally, Sheriff Crowder lowered his weapon with a grunt. "Get animal control here," he barked at no one in particular. "And somebody find out where this thing came from." But Mercer, his eyes narrowed. "This is on you. If that cat so much as twitches wrong, it's your badge." Mercer nodded, relief flooding through him, even as he recognized the weight of responsibility he'd just taken on. He watched as the magnificent creature's golden eyes met his, and in that moment, he could have sworn he saw gratitude in their depths. Through the windows, the gathering crowd pressed closer, their voices a low murmur of excitement and fear. But Mercer barely noticed them. His attention was fixed on the collar, his mind already racing with questions. Who would keep a leopard? Why would they need to track it? And most importantly, what had happened to make this powerful predator flee to humans for help? The leopard's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, its scarred body telling a story of prolonged abuse. Mercer knew, deep in his gut, that this was just the beginning of something much bigger and much darker than anyone in their small town could have imagined. The animal control team arrived within 20 minutes, there. Movements careful and precise as they secured the exhausted leopard. Mercer watched intently as they administered a mild sedative, just enough to keep the big cat calm while they examined it. The creature's golden eyes remained fixed on him, as if recognizing him as an ally. "Let me get a closer look at that collar," Mercer said, crouching beside the leopard once it was safely restrained. The metal band was sophisticated, not some makeshift restraint, but professionally manufactured. His fingers traced the edge carefully, finding what he suspected. A small electronic component embedded in the thick metal. "It's got a tracking unit," he announced, pulling out his phone to document the discovery. "This isn't just a regular collar. Someone's been monitoring this animal's movements." Sheriff Crowder snorted from where he stood, arms crossed. "What difference does that make? Probably escaped from some private zoo or animal sanctuary. We'll check the usual spots. Return it. Case closed." "Sir, with respect, I don't think," Mercer began, but Crowder cut him off. "No, you don't think, Deputy. That's your problem." The sheriff's voice dripped with contempt. "This isn't some mystery novel. It's a simple animal control issue. Get it back where it belongs." Snickers rippled through the other officers. Mercer felt his face flush but pressed on. "The collar's cutting into its flesh, Sheriff. That's abuse. And look at these old scars. This animal's been mistreated." "Oh, for heaven's sake," Crowder exploded. "Since when did you become Dr. Doolittle? Next thing you'll be telling us it spoke to you." More laughter from the gathered officers. "Get this straight, Mercer. You're a deputy, not a wildlife detective. This isn't your concern anymore." "But sir, that's enough." Crowder's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "The animal goes back to the wild. End of discussion. Or would you rather spend the next month on parking duty?" Mercer stood slowly, his jaw tight. "No, sir. Good. Now get back to work. Real work." The sheriff turned away, dismissing him entirely. The other officers dispersed, still chuckling about Deputy Doolittle and his pet kitty. But Mercer lingered, watching as animal control prepared to transport the leopard. When no one was looking, he quickly snapped several close-up photos of the tracking unit with his phone later that night. Long after his shift had ended, Mercer sat at his small kitchen table, his laptop open before him. The photos of the collar filled his screen as he researched the manufacturer's markings he'd noticed. It wasn't easy. The design was unusual, not matching any standard wildlife tracking equipment. Hours passed as he dug deeper, following digital breadcrumbs. His coffee grew cold, forgotten, as patterns began to emerge. The signal type, the frequency range, they weren't meant for simple location tracking. Sophistication suggested something more like military-grade surveillance equipment. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, rubbing his tired eyes. "How would someone put such advanced tech on a leopard? And why would they let it get damaged enough to break free?" He pulled up a signal tracking program he'd learned about in his academy days. It took some doing, but he managed to isolate the frequency the collar was broadcasting on. What he found made him sit up straight, suddenly wide awake. The signal wasn't coming from any nearby wildlife sanctuary or zoo. Instead, it led to a remote area deep in the surrounding wilderness, miles from any registered facility. According to county records, there was nothing out there but abandoned mining claims and rough terrain. Mercer stared at the blinking dot on his screen, his mind racing. The leopard hadn't just wandered into town by accident. It had come to there, stationed deliberately, carrying that scrap of cloth in its mouth like a message. And now he knew it had escaped from somewhere it shouldn't have been in the first place. "What were they doing to you out there?" he whispered, thinking of the animal's desperate behavior, its injuries, its apparent trust in him. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than a simple case of exotic animal trafficking, the leopards. Arrival wasn't just strange, it was a warning. He gathered his notes, methodically documenting everything he'd found. The sheriff might dismiss him. His fellow officers might mock him. But Mercer knew one thing for certain. Something very wrong was happening in their quiet corner of Montana. And that leopard was trying to tell them about it. The morning sun cast long shadows across the mountain road as Mercer's patrol car wound its way up toward the coordinates he'd traced. According to county records, this remote spot housed the Mountain Valley Wildlife Research Station, though he'd never heard of it before. The gravel crunched under his tires as he approached a heavy gate marked with no trespassing signs. His radio crackled. Deputy Mercer, return to station immediately. Sheriff Crowder's voice held barely contained anger. That's a direct order.
Oh, my Mercer's hands tightened on the steering wheel.
Sir, I'm just doing a routine patrol. Don't insult my intelligence. Deputy Crowder cut in. I know exactly where you are. That facility is private property, conducting legitimate research. You have no business there without a warrant. But sir, the tracking signal is none of your concern. Crowder's voice rose sharply. This is your last warning, Mercer. Drop this nonsense or face suspension. Am I clear? Yes, sir, Mercer replied quietly, though his jaw clenched in frustration. He turned the car around, knowing he couldn't push further, not alone. Anyway, back in town, he pulled into the local animal rehabilitation center, hoping to at least check on the leopard. Instead, he found a lean woman with auburn hair arguing with animal control officers. The animal needs proper medical attention, she insisted, hands on her hips. You can't just dump it in the woods. Ma'am, we have our orders, one officer replied warily. I'm Leah Hargrove, and I run this facility, she continued. That leopard shows clear signs of abuse. At minimum, it needs treatment and documentation. Mercer stepped forward. She's right, he said. And I have evidence it came from an unregistered facility. Leah's sharp green eyes fixed on him. You're the deputy who stopped them from shooting it. The animal control officers exchanged glances and retreated to their truck, leaving Mercer and Leah alone. She studied him for a long moment. Come inside, she said finally. We need to talk. It's in her office, surrounded by filing cabinets and wildlife. Photos. Leah listened intently as Mercer explained about the tracking collar and the signal. Her expression grew darker with each detail. Cole Drummond, she said when he finished. That facility's on his land, though it's hidden behind shell. Companies and fake permits. The cattle rancher? Mercer asked, surprised. What would he want with exotic animals? Pain flickered across Leah's face. My husband worked for him years ago. Found out Drummond was involved in illegal wildlife trafficking. Before he could testify, she swallowed hard. They said it was an accident, a fall from his horse. I'm so sorry, Mercer said quietly. That leopard, Leah continued, its behavior wasn't random. The way it came straight to the police station, carrying that cloth-like evidence that shows incredible intelligence and purpose. You think it was trying to tell us something? Worked with big cats for 15 years, she said. They're capable of complex reasoning and strong bonds. This one was clearly raised by humans from a young age. The fact it sought help instead of avoiding people suggests it had a special connection. With someone? Mercer leaned forward. Someone who might need help themselves? Leah nodded grimly. Drummond's operation isn't just about animals. My husband discovered he was using vulnerable people too. Immigrants, runaways, anyone who wouldn't be missed. The animals are just part of it. The sheriff warned me off, Mercer admitted. Seemed pretty adamant about protecting that facility. Crowder's been in Drummond's pocket for years, Leah replied. That's why my husband's death was never properly investigated. She stood up, pacing the small office. But this time, we have physical evidence. That collar, the tracking signal, we'll need more, Mercer said. Something concrete enough for outside authorities. Leah stopped pacing and faced him. I still have contacts in wildlife enforcement. I know those mountains better than anyone. If you're serious about investigating this, I am, Mercer said firmly. Whatever's happening up there, that leopard came to us for help. I can't just ignore that." A ghost of a smile crossed Leah's face. "Most people would think we're crazy, you know?" "Following the lead of a leopard, maybe we are," Mercer admitted. "But something tells me we're right about this. If someone's being held up there, then we might be their only chance," Leah finished. She held out her hand. "Partners?" Mercer shook it, feeling for the first time since the leopard's arrival that he wasn't alone in this fight. Partners. As they began planning their investigation, neither spoke about the risks they were taking. They both knew too well the power Drummond held in the county, and the lengths he'd go to protect his secrets. They also knew that sometimes justice required courage, and that truth, like a desperate leopard, had a way of finding its champions. The morning air bit cold and sharp as Mercer and Leah hiked through the Montana wilderness. They followed the tracking signal's path, moving steadily higher into the mountains where Drummond's compound lay hidden. Frost-covered pine needles crunched beneath their boots, and their breath came out in white puffs against the early autumn. "Chill, the signal's getting stronger," Mercer said, checking the handheld tracker he'd borrowed from the station's evidence room. He tried to ignore the guilty knot in his stomach. Technically, this wasn't authorized police work anymore. Leah moved with the confidence of someone who knew these trails well. Her dark auburn hair was tucked under a worn baseball cap, and she carried a heavy backpack full of supplies. "Hey, there's an old logging road about half a mile ahead," she said. "Drummond's people use it sometimes, but most folks don't know it exists." "Anymore?" Mercer nodded, trying to match her sure-footed pace. He wasn't out of shape exactly, but desk work hadn't prepared him for mountain climbing. "I'm probably not what you expected for a partner in this," he admitted, his breath coming harder than he'd like. Leah glanced back at him, her green eyes sharp and assessing. "You mean because you're not some tough guy cop with a hero complex?" She shook her head. "I'll take quiet courage over swagger any day. You stood in front of those rifles to protect that leopard. That tells me everything I need to know." Her words warmed him more than he wanted to admit. They pressed on, the terrain growing steeper. Around mid-morning, Leah suddenly held up her hand, stopping them both. She pointed to the ground beside. "The trail, look at this," she said, kneeling down. Large paw prints marked the soft earth, along with dark spots that could only be dried blood. "These are fresh tiger prints, I'd say, and these marks here." She indicated long scrapes in the dirt. "That's from a transport cage being dragged." Mercer took photos with his phone, documenting everything. They found more evidence as they continued. Discarded zip ties, torn pieces of heavy-duty netting, even tranquilizer dart caps half buried in leaves. Each discovery built a clearer picture of what they were dealing with. "They're moving them at night," Leah explained, examining another set of tracks. "Multiple species, leopards, tigers, maybe even bears. The blood trails suggest some are injured or fighting back," Mercer added quietly. They were so focused on the evidence that they almost missed the first warning sign. A twig snapped. Somewhere above them, then another. Leah's head jerked up, her expression suddenly alert. "We're being watched," she whispered. Before they could retreat, men emerged from the trees, 4 of them, all carrying rifles. Their camouflage clothing bore no insignias, but their professional stance told Mercer these weren't ordinary hunters. They moved with military precision, cutting off all escape routes. Well, one of them drawled, his rifle trained steadily on Mercer's chest. "Looks like the deputy's gotten himself lost. Mrs. Hargrove, too. What are the chances?" "This is protected land," Mercer said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We have every right to be here." A harsh laugh answered him. "Protected is right. Mr. Drummond protects what's his." The man gestured to one of his companions. "Show them what happens to trespassers." The 4th man dragged forward something that made Mercer's blood run cold. A steel transport cage containing a full-grown mountain lion. The big cat snarled, its eyes wild with fear and rage. They meant to make this look like another animal attack, Mercer realized. "Just like Leah's husband? You really think you'll get away with this?" Leah demanded, her voice tight with anger. "People know we're out here, do they?" the leader asked mockingly. "Because I heard the deputy's been warned off this investigation. And everyone knows how you like to wander these mountains alone, Mrs. Hargrove, grieving your poor dead husband." Mercer felt sick. They'd walked right into this. He should have known Drummond would have the trails watched, should have been more careful. Now Leah would pay for his mistake, just like her husband had. The mountain lion's cage was being positioned on the slope above them. One clean release, and gravity would do the rest.
Ow!
The cat would be on them before they could run. Mercer's hand moved toward his service weapon, but he knew he'd never clear the holster before the rifles found him. Any last words? The leader asked, clearly enjoying himself. Maybe a prayer? Mercer's mind raced. 4 armed men, an enraged mountain lion, no backup coming. Everything in him wanted to apologize to Leah for leading her into this, but he forced himself to focus. There had to be a way out. He hadn't survived that night with the Leopard just to die here, leaving Drummond's secrets buried in these mountains. The sound of the cage latch releasing echoed through the trees like a gunshot. Scene continuation. Available on request. The cage door swung open with a metallic screech. In that split second, Mercer's training kicked in, not the kind learned at the academy, but countless hours studying animal behavior reports at his desk, while others mocked his thoroughness. "Leah, drop," he shouted, yanking her down as the mountain lion launched from its cage. The cat sailed over them, its powerful muscles bunched in predatory focus, their attackers scattered, their formation breaking as the enraged animal landed among them. Mercer's hand moved with surprising steadiness to his belt, where he'd clipped the tranquilizer gun he'd borrowed from Leah's sanctuary. The others had laughed when he'd insisted on bringing it. Now, as the mountain lion wheeled around for another attack, he tracked its movement with careful precision. "Stay absolutely still," he whispered to Leah, who lay frozen beside him. The cat's attention split between them and the armed men, its tail lashing in agitation. Mercer could see the fear in its eyes. This wasn't a natural hunter, but a tormented creature driven to desperation. The leader of the group raised his rifle, but the mountain lion was faster, sprang at him with a snarl, sending the weapon flying. In the chaos, Mercer took his shot. The tranquilizer dart found its mark in the cat's shoulder. The big cat stumbled, its movements becoming uncoordinated. "Run." Mercer grabbed Leah's arm, pulling her toward the dense undergrowth. Gunfire erupted behind them, bullets spitting dirt. At their heels, they crashed through the brush, thorns tearing at their clothes. Mercer's phone fell, shattering on the rocks, along with all their photographic evidence. Leah stumbled on the uneven ground, but Mercer caught her before she could fall. They could hear their pursuers crashing through the woods behind them. The mountain lion's sedated roars grew fainter as the drug took effect. "This way." Leah tugged him toward a narrow ravine. "There's a cave system, we might lose them." Squeezed through the tight passage, the rough stones scraping their shoulders. Behind them, angry shouts echoed off the rock walls. Mercer's breath came in harsh gasps, his legs burning from the effort. But he didn't slow down, he couldn't, not with Leah's life depending on him. The passage opened into a larger cavern, dim light filtering through cracks above. Leah led them through a maze of smaller tunnels, finally emerging on a different part of the mountainside. They didn't stop running until they couldn't hear their pursuers anymore, collapsing against a tree trunk. Leah looked at Mercer with new respect. "That was incredible. Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Mercer shrugged, still catching his breath. "Practice. Lots of practice. When the other deputies were at the shooting range, I was studying animal behavior and tranquilizer techniques. Never thought I'd need it quite like this. You saved our lives." Leah's voice was quiet. "But they got away with everything.
Our
Evidence, the cat, all of it. The weight of their situation settled over them. They had nothing to show for their near-death experience, nothing except their own testimony, which would sound unbelievable even to sympathetic ears. Their fears were confirmed when they finally made it back to town. Sheriff Crowder was waiting at the station, his face flushed with anger. Breaking and entering on private property, he bellowed at Mercer, discharging a weapon without cause. And now spinning wild tales about armed men and trafficked animals. He slammed his hand on his desk. "I warned you to stay away from Drummond's land." "We were attacked," Mercer insisted. "They tried to kill us with a trained mountain lion." Crowder's laugh was bitter. "Do you hear yourself, deputy? Mrs. Hargrove's grief is no excuse for dragging her into your paranoid fantasies. Forward, her eyes flashing. My husband wasn't paranoid when he tried to expose Drummond, and now we know why he died. That's enough, Crowder roared. One more word about Cole Drummond, and you'll both face charges. Now get out of my sight. They left the station in defeat, their reputations in tatters. The other deputies wouldn't meet their eyes. In the parking lot, Leah touched Mercer's arm. Can't give up, she said softly. What we saw up there. It's bigger than we thought. Drummond's not just smuggling a few exotic animals. This is an operation. Professional guards? Equipped facilities? Mercer nodded grimly. And enough influence to make the sheriff ignore attempted murder. He glanced back at the station where the Leopard was still being held. But that cat came to us for a reason. It's trying to tell us something. Something worth killing for, Leah agreed. Her hand found his, squeezing gently. At least now we know what we're up against. We have each other, Mercer added, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. The bookish deputy who'd always worked alone had found an ally he could. Trust someone who understood that real courage wasn't about swagger or gunfights, but about standing up for what was right no matter the cost. They might have lost their evidence and their credibility, but they'd gained something more important, a shared purpose, and the knowledge that they were stronger together than apart. The Leopard's desperate plea for help still echoed in their minds, driving them forward despite their fears. After their narrow escape, Mercer couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. Late at night in his small apartment, he spread out everything they knew about Drummond across his kitchen table. Newspaper clippings, old police reports, notes from their investigation created a scattered puzzle of corruption. His eyes kept returning to the photo of the Leopard's tracking collar. Something about its sophisticated design bothered him. It wasn't meant for wildlife research, it was a control device built to inflict pain if needed. But why go to such lengths? The next morning, he met Leah at her animal sanctuary. She was tending to an injured hawk, her movements gentle despite her obvious exhaustion. I've been thinking about the Leopard's behavior, she said, carefully wrapping. The hawk's wing. It wasn't just running from something. The way it came straight to the police station, how it tried to get our attention. That's not normal wildlife behavior, even for a captive animal. Mercer nodded, watching her work. It was trained, or at least raised by someone who taught it. To trust humans? Exactly, Leah finished with the hawk and turned to face him. And there's something else. Years ago, before my husband died, he mentioned rumors about Drummond keeping exotic animals as pets. But there was one detail that seemed odd. Something about a girl who helped raise them. Mercer's attention sharpened. A girl. What do you mean it was just whispers back then? A teenager who supposedly lived on Drummond's compound. Said she was like an animal whisperer, working with his private collection. But after my husband's death, all talk about her stopped. Mercer pulled out his laptop, fingers flying over the keys. When did these rumors start? Around 5 years ago, I think? Why? Because 5 years ago, a local environmental lawyer named James Mitchell disappeared while investigating Drummond's activities. The case went cold, but Mercer turned the screen toward Leah, showing a news article. He had a 14-year-old daughter who vanished 2 months later. Leah's face paled. You don't think I need to check something? Mercer pulled up the police database, searching through missing persons reports. The girl's photo appeared. On screen, a smiling teenager with bright eyes and long dark hair. Sarah Mitchell. She was never found. That poor child, Leah whispered. If Drummond has kept her all this time, it explains everything. Mercer stood up, pacing as the pieces clicked into place. The Leopard wasn't just escaping, it was seeking help for her. She must have raised it from a cub, formed a bond strong enough that even after they were separated, it remembered. That's why it came to the police station, Leah realized. She taught it to find help. The collar, the timing, it was all deliberate. Mercer felt a chill run down his spine. Drummond's not just trafficking animals. He's holding a teenage girl hostage. Probably has been, ever since her father disappeared. We have to help her. Leah's voice was fierce. But how? We have no proof and the sheriff won't listen. Maybe we do have proof. Mercer pulled out the tracking collar they'd taken from the Leopard. This isn't just a restraint device. It's a two-way system. If we can trace its signal back to its source, we could find where they're keeping her. Leah stood up, determination replacing her exhaustion. And this time, we'll be ready. For their security. Their security. They spent hours analyzing the collar's technology, mapping signal patterns and cross-referencing them with satellite images of Drummond's property. The compound was massive, with multiple outbuildings and secured areas. Look at this section. Mercer pointed to a heavily fortified structure set apart from the main buildings. It's isolated, heavily guarded but connected to the animal holding facilities. Perfect place to keep someone hidden. All these years, Leah shook her head, tears in her eyes. That girl has been there all this time, watching her father's killer profit from his crimes, using her to control his illegal animals. The Leopard was her only friend, Mercer said softly. And when Drummond decided to sell it, she must have found a way to help it escape, knowing it would lead us back to her. The weight of their discovery settled over them. This wasn't just about animal trafficking anymore. A young woman's life hung in the balance, along with justice for her father's disappearance. We can't go to the sheriff, Leah said firmly. He's too deep in Drummond's pocket. No, Mercer agreed. But now we know what we're fighting for. And we won't let them silence us this time. The Leopard's desperate arrival at the police station now made perfect sense. It wasn't just an animal seeking shelter, but a messenger carrying a plea for help from someone who had lost everything except hope. Someone who had spent years teaching it to trust, to remember, to find its way to people who could make a difference. Looking at the compound's layout, Mercer felt a fierce determination replace his usual caution. They had stumbled onto something far darker than they'd imagined, but they had also found their purpose. Somewhere in that fortress of corruption, a girl was waiting for the help she'd risked everything to summon. The Leopard had done its part. Now, it was their turn to act. We need help, Mercer said, spreading maps across Leah's kitchen table. We can't do this alone. Leah nodded, her fingers tracing the perimeter of Drummond's compound on the satellite printout. I know some people. Who might be willing? It's good people who've lost things to Drummond over the years. Can they be trusted? Mercer looked up sharply. One leak and we're dead, along with that girl. Tom Bradley lost his ranch when Drummond fabricated water rights claims. Maria Cortez's veterinary practice was ruined after she questioned some suspicious injuries on his livestock. And there's Jake Wilson. He used to work security for Drummond until he saw too much. Leah's eyes were hard. They all have reasons to help, and none of them will talk. Mercer carefully laid out the evidence they'd salvaged. Photographs of the transport cages, blood samples from the attack site, and most importantly, the Leopard's tracking collar. We'll need equipment. Night vision, communications, gear, weapons. Jake can help with that, Leah said. He still has connections from his security days. They worked through the night, plotting entry points and escape routes. The tracking collar's data revealed regular patrol patterns around the compound's perimeter. Every 4 hours, guards changed shifts. Every 6 hours, supply vehicles made deliveries through the north gate. By morning, their small team had assembled. In Leah's barn, Tom Bradley, a weathered rancher with calloused hands and determined eyes. Maria Cortez, her veterinary kit packed with tranquilizers and medical supplies. Jake Wilson, who brought tactical gear and grim expertise. A girl will be here. Mercer pointed to the isolated structure they'd identified. Based on the Leopards. Tracking data, there's a network of underground passages connecting it to the animal holding areas. That's our way in. Security cameras cover every surface approach, Jake warned, marking danger zones on the map. But there's a maintenance tunnel that runs under the north fence, used for water lines. It'll be tight, but we can squeeze through. Maria studied the compound layout. What about the other animals? We can't leave them there. We'll need a distraction, Leah said. Something big enough to draw their security away from the girl's location. If we can trigger a mass release of the animals, too dangerous, Jake cut in. Those cages hold everything from wolves to big cats. We'd be putting the whole county at risk. Not if we coordinate with state wildlife services, Tom suggested. I still know people there who aren't in Drummond's pocket. They could be standing by to help contain any escapees. Mercer nodded slowly. We time it right. The chaos could give us the window we need. But we'll have to move fast. Once they realize what's happening, Drummond might try to move the girl or worse. They spent hours drilling the sequence. Tom would disable the power grid. Maria would handle any injured animals or people. Jake would lead the infiltration. Team through the tunnels. Leah knew the layout of animal holding areas, and Mercer would find Sarah Mitchell. What about the sheriff? Maria asked. He'll respond as soon as the alarms go off. I've got that covered, Mercer said quietly. Called in a favor from the state police. They'll be conducting a surprise audit of the department that night. Every deputy will be tied up with paperwork. Leah touched his arm. You could lose your badge over this. Some things matter more than a badge. His voice was firm. That girl has spent 5 years in captivity watching her father's murderer walk free. She's waited long enough for justice. They gathered their gear. Night vision goggles, tactical vests, tranquilizer guns, bolt cutters, and medical supplies. Each person memorized their role, their timing, their fallback positions if things went wrong. 24 hours, Mercer told them. We move tomorrow night when the moon is dark. Get some rest. Check your equipment. Be ready. As the others left to prepare, Leah stayed behind. You're different, she said softly. From when we first met? Stronger. Not stronger. Mercer corrected her. Sure. For the first time in my career, I know exactly what needs to be done. No doubts, no hesitation. We could die tomorrow. Yes. He met her eyes steadily. What? But if we don't try, that girl definitely dies. Maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. Drummond can't risk letting her go. Not with what she knows. Leah nodded, then surprised him by taking his hand. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm glad you're the one leading this. Mercer squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her trust. Tomorrow they would challenge a powerful man's empire with nothing but courage and desperation on their side. But looking at his small team's determination, felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. They had truth on their side. The loyalty of a leopard that had crossed miles of wilderness to save its friend. Sometimes Mercer thought that was enough to change the world. The moonless night wrapped around them like a shroud as Mercer and his team approached Drummond's compound. The air felt thick with tension, carrying the distant sounds of caged animals. Jake led them to the maintenance tunnel, its rusty grate barely visible in the darkness. Remember, Mercer whispered, we've got 15 minutes before Tom cuts the power. Every second counts. The tunnel was narrower than expected. They crawled through damp earth and cobwebs, their breathing echoing off concrete walls. Leah followed close behind Mercer, her movements steady despite the claustrophobic space. After what felt like hours, but was only minutes, they reached the exit point. Jake checked his watch. 3 minutes. The compound's floodlights cast harsh shadows across empty yards. Guards patrolled in predictable patterns, their boots crunching on gravel. Mercer counted the seconds, watching the nearest guard disappear around a corner. Suddenly, darkness fell. The compound plunged into black silence, broken only by startled shouts and the increasing agitation of caged animals. They moved. Leah split, off with Maria toward the animal enclosures, while Mercer and Jake headed for the isolation building. They encountered their first resistance at the entrance to guards, fumbling with flashlights. Jake took them down with practiced efficiency, using tranquilizer darts. Inside, the building reeked of fear and despair. They found the girl in a windowless room, curled on a thin mattress. She flinched when the door opened, but her eyes widened with recognition at Mercer's uniform. Sarah Mitchell? We're here to get you out? She nodded, trembling, but alert. Years of captivity had left her pale and thin, but there was steel in her gaze. The animals, she managed. He hurts them. We know. Our friends are helping them right now. They helped her up, but alarms suddenly blared through the compound. Emergency lights flashed red, painting the corridors in blood-colored warnings. Somewhere an engine roared to life. Move. Jake urged, taking point as they rushed toward their exit. Outside, chaos erupted. Leah and Maria had succeeded too well. Cages stood open, their occupants fleeing into the night. A tiger bounded past them, ignoring humans in its dash for freedom. Wolves slipped like shadows between buildings. The air filled with roars, screams, and gunfire. They reached the maintenance tunnel just as headlights swept the yard. Drummond's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Kill them all! Don't let them escape!" Sarah went first, then Jake. Mercer was helping Leah into the tunnel when the first bullet struck concrete near his head. He returned fire, buying precious seconds. As Leah disappeared into the darkness, the tunnel felt endless now. Every yard a battle against panic and exhaustion. They could hear pursuit behind them, boots thundering, voices shouting. Sarah whimpered, but kept moving, driven by the promise of freedom. Of freedom. They emerged into chaos. The surrounding forest strobed with emergency lights as state wildlife officers attempted to contain escaped animals. But Drummond's men had circled around, cutting off their planned escape route. The ravine, Leah pointed. To a steep decline leading toward the river. There's a trail. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. They scattered, diving for cover. Jake went down, clutching his shoulder, but waving them on. "Go, I'll hold them." Mercer grabbed Sarah's hand and ran, Leah close behind. They plunged down the ravine, branches whipping their faces. Behind them, Jake's covering fire became sporadic, then stopped. They were halfway down when Drummond's men opened fire from above. Leah cried out, stumbling. Mercer turned in time to see her fall, blood spreading across her jacket. He scrambled. Back up toward her, bullets kicking up dirt around them. Sarah pressed herself against a boulder, eyes wide with terror. Leah's face was white with pain. "The girl," she gasped. "Get her out. Don't let this be for nothing. I'm not leaving you." "Yes, you are." She pushed him away with surprising strength. "I'll be fine. Just come back for me." More gunfire forced Mercer down. When he looked up, Drummond's men were rappelling down the ravine walls. They had seconds, not minutes. With an agonized look at Leah, Mercer grabbed Sarah and ran. They splashed through the shallow river, scrambled up the far bank, and disappeared into the trees. Behind them, Drummond's voice echoed off the canyon. Walls, promising retribution. They ran until Sarah couldn't run anymore, then walked until she swayed with exhaustion. Finally, in a small clearing miles from the compound, Mercer stopped. His chest felt hollow, torn between duty and despair. They'd rescued the girl, but at what cost? Leah was injured, possibly dying. Jake was either captured or worse. Somewhere in the darkness, dangerous predators roamed free. Sarah touched his arm. "The leopard," she whispered. "Found you, didn't it? That's how you knew to come?" Mercer nodded, throat tight. "Then there's still hope." Her voice grew stronger. "It won't let them hurt her. The animals. They understand more than people think. They remember kindness." But Mercer barely heard her. All he could see was Leah falling, her blood staining the ground. All he could hear was Drummond's voice, promising vengeance. They'd won this battle, freed an innocent girl from captivity. But the war was far from over. The price was already too high. Dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in colors of fire and blood. Somewhere in that vast wilderness, Leah was fighting for her life. Mercer knew, with crushing certainty, that their next confrontation with Drummond would be their last. Mercer sat in his patrol car outside the police station, staring at his badge on the dashboard. The morning sun caught its tarnished surface, a bitter reminder of everything he'd lost. Inside, the sheriff was probably already filing the paperwork to end his career. His phone buzzed. Another message from the hospital. Leah was still in surgery, fighting for her life. The guilt crushed his chest like a vice. He should have protected her better, should have found another way. Deputy Mercer? He looked up to see Officer Maria Torres approaching his window, her face drawn with concern. She'd been one of the few who believed in him from the start. "Sheriff Crowder's looking for you," she said quietly. "He's not happy. When is he ever?" Mercer tried to smile but couldn't manage it. Inside the station, Sheriff Crowder stood waiting, his face flushed with anger. Turn in your badge and gun, Mercer. You're done. With respect. Respect, Crowder's voice rose. He led an unauthorized raid on a respected citizen's property. Got officers injured, caused thousands in property damage, released dangerous animals into the wild. We rescued a kidnapped girl, Mercer interrupted, his voice steady despite his racing heart. A girl who's now missing again, along with the evidence you claim existed. Crowder leaned forward, jabbing a finger at Mercer's chest. Face it, you've got nothing. It's no proof, no witnesses, and now no job. Mercer placed his badge on the desk, but kept his gun. Keep the badge, but I'm not done. You walk out that door, I'll have you arrested. No. Mercer met his former boss's gaze. You won't. Because deep down, you know I'm right about Drummond. And someday soon, everyone else will know it too. He walked out, ignoring the stares of his fellow officers. His career was over, but that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was finding Sarah before Drummond did. In his car, he spread out a map of the region. Sarah knew these mountains. She'd survived here for years before her capture. She'd run somewhere familiar, somewhere she felt safe. But Drummond knew that too. His phone rang. It was Maria. Mercer, you need to hear this. Highway patrol spotted 3 of Drummond's trucks heading up Old Canyon Road. They're carrying weapons. Mercer's heart jumped. Old Canyon Road led to the abandoned mining operations. Perfect territory for someone trying to hide, or someone trying to corner there. Pray there's more, Maria continued. The Leopard's been sighted in the same area. And Mercer, it's injured but still moving. It's like it's tracking something, or someone. The Leopard was looking for Sarah, just as it had searched for help at the police station. Mercer started his engine. Thanks, Maria. Be careful, the sheriff. Might not appreciate you helping me. The sheriff can kiss my badge, just don't get yourself killed. Mercer drove fast but carefully, watching for signs of pursuit. The road wound higher into the mountains, deteriorating from pavement to gravel. To dirt. He killed the engine 2 miles from where Maria had reported the sightings and continued on foot. The morning sun cast long shadows through the trees. Mercer moved silently, years of hunting experience guiding his steps, fresh tire tracks marked. The dirt Drummond's men had passed through recently. A distant gunshot echoed off the canyon walls. Then another. Mercer quickened his pace, staying low and using the terrain for cover. More shots rang out, followed by shouts. He was getting close. The old mining road ended at a box canyon. Mercer crouched behind a boulder, assessing the situation. Drummond's trucks were parked haphazardly, their drivers taking cover as they fired at something above them. Following their aim, he spotted movement on the canyon wall. Sarah, scrambling between rocks like a mountain goat, desperately seeking. Higher ground Drummond himself stood in the open, directing his men with angry gestures. Don't let her reach the top. Shoot her if you have to. We can't let her talk. Mercer counted 7 men, all armed. They had Sarah pinned down, but their attention was focused upward. None of them noticed the dark shape moving through the shadows behind their vehicles, the Leopard. Despite its injuries, it had followed Sarah here. Like him, it refused to abandon her. Mercer checked his ammunition, 1 full magazine, plus 6 rounds in his backup. Not nearly enough for a frontal assault. But maybe he didn't need one. The Leopard was creating a distraction without even trying. Every rustle in the bushes made Drummond's men twitch and turn, dividing their attention. They were experienced. Thugs, but they weren't used to being hunted. Mercer took a deep breath, remembering Leah's words about courage being quiet. He wasn't the hero type, no swagger, no dramatic speeches. But he had something better: patience, determination, and the element of surprise. He began moving, using the confusion to work his way closer. The Leopard's presence had Drummond's men bunched together, watching the wrong shadows. Sarah had stopped climbing, wedged into a defensible position high above them. Just a little closer. The right moment would come. It had to. Mercer touched his chest where his badge used to be. He thought of Leah fighting for her life in surgery, of Sarah's years of captivity, of all the animals Drummond had tortured and killed. One way or another, it would end here. The morning sun climbed higher, shortening the shadows. Soon there would be nowhere left to hide. The sun climbed higher, casting harsh shadows across the canyon floor. Drummond's patience had run out. Strode toward Sarah's position, pistol raised. "Enough games," he shouted. "Come down now, or I'll have my men drag you down." Sarah pressed herself against the rock face, trembling but defiant. Mercer knew he had to act. Drawing his weapon, he emerged from cover. "Drop it, Drummond." The rancher spun, surprise flickering. Across his face, before settling into a cold smile, Deputy Mercer, or should I say, ex-deputy, always where you're not wanted. "Step away from her," Mercer commanded, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Drummond laughed, a sound without. "Warmth. Or what? You'll shoot me. We both know you don't have it in you. You're nothing but a paper pusher playing hero." His men spread out, weapons trained on Mercer. The morning air grew thick with tension. "Last chance," Drummond said. "Walk away. Forget what you've seen, or join the girl." Mercer's answer was to step forward, gun unwavering. Drummond moved like lightning, closing the distance between them. His hidden blade flashed in the sunlight as he knocked Mercer's weapon aside. They crashed together, fighting for control. Drummond was stronger, his blade seeking Mercer's throat. The deputy barely managed to deflect the strike, feeling steel slice across his arm instead. "I built everything here," Drummond snarled, pressing his advantage. "Who are you to take it from me?" The blade came down again. Mercer caught Drummond's wrist, muscles straining. But the rancher's greater weight was forcing him back, step by step, toward the canyon edge. Blood ran down Mercer's arm. His strength was fading. The blade inched closer to his chest. A savage roar split the air. The leopard burst from the shadows, a blur of spotted fury. Despite its wounds, it slammed into Drummond with incredible force. The rancher screamed as fangs found his shoulder, the blade flying from his grip. Mercer seized his chance. He tackled Drummond, driving him to the ground. The leopard released its grip and backed away, golden eyes watching intently. "It's over," Mercer said, securing handcuffs around Drummond's wrists. "You're under arrest." State police arrived within the hour. Having been contacted by Maria, they found extensive evidence of trafficking and abuse throughout Drummond's compound. The sheriff's corruption was exposed through documents discovered in Drummond's office. Leading to multiple arrests, Sarah was reunited with distant relatives who had never stopped searching for her. The testimony she provided, along with recovered records, ensured Drummond would spend the rest of his life in prison. Weeks later, Mercer stood beside Leah's hospital bed. She was pale but improving, her fierce spirit undiminished. "I heard they're turning Drummond's compound into an animal sanctuary," she said, taking his hand. Mercer nodded. "They want you to run it once you're back on your feet." "Us," Leah corrected. "They want us to run it. If you're interested in a career change." He smiled, squeezing her hand. "I can't think of anything better." Through the window, they could see the leopard in its temporary enclosure. Its wounds were healing like theirs. Soon it would be strong enough for release into a protected reserve. The big cat looked up at them, and Mercer saw in its eyes what he had seen that first night, not a monster, but a soul capable of profound loyalty and love. Sometimes, he realized, the greatest courage came not from being fearless, but from being afraid and acting anyway. He and Leah had a long road ahead, but they would walk it together, stronger for having found each other in the darkness. If this story found you at the right moment, subscribe and stay close. Tomorrow's may be the reminder you didn't know you needed.